Hi, this is Mr. Evans. This video is going to look at some 9-mark questions in paper 1, specifically from the 2017 exam. Now then, once you have answered the multiple choice questions in paper 1, there are some calculation questions. Make sure you do bring a calculator, that's really important. Then in the 2018 paper, following those 2 calculation questions, in paper 1 section B, there was 3 9-mark questions in a row. I'm not 100% sure, but I am anticipating the same structure this year with 3 9-mark questions. So this video is going to look at how to answer those. This is an example of a 9-mark question from the 2017 paper. If you just want to pause the video and maybe just have a look at the question and think about how you would answer it. So this is the mark scheme for a 9-mark question. Okay, first thing to note is that there are marks available for AO1, which is knowledge, AO2, which is application, and AO3, which is analysis. Okay, so a few things there. First of all, there are marks for just showing knowledge, which I'll refer back to later on. There are no marks for AO4 evaluation. In other words, you do not need a conclusion for a 9-mark question. How do you get into the top band? Well, you demonstrate a depth and range of knowledge and understanding of issues in the question. In other words, you understand the topic that they're assessing you on. And then you build a chain of argument which is relevant to the context that they have provided. So if we go back to that question, the context in this case is a cafe selling coffee and tea, and the volume of coffee is several times, the volume of coffee sales is several times greater than the volume of tea sales. So how do you go about answering the question? The question is, first thing you've got to know is what the question is, and you need to analyse how the cafe's overall sales volume of hot drinks would be affected by a rise in incomes. This is a typical way that they're asking these 9-mark questions. They're asking you to link 2 things. The 2 things in this case is a rise in income, and they're asking you to link that to sales volume. And they've given you the income elasticity of demand data. So how do you go about answering the question? Well, I'll come back to this in a minute, but if you don't want to watch the rest of the video, I think that this might help you answer 9-mark questions. First of all, understanding that these 9-mark questions often link 2 topics together. So they might link together labour turnover and customer service, which was a question in the 2018 paper, how an impact on labour turnover would affect customer service. Changes in income and the impact on sales volume, that's the question from 2017. And they could ask a question on, say, training the workforce in HR and how that would affect a company's brand image in marketing. So a good way of practicing these 9-mark questions is to pick 2 random topics from the specification and just build a chain of analysis linking those 2 topics, because that's what they're doing with these 9-mark questions. They're picking 2 seemingly random topics and asking you to link them. Now then, if you're absolutely stuck or you're not 100% sure, you can just start with a definition because there's AO1 marks available. Now, you don't have to start with the definition. I know that students always want a really crystal clear way to answer, but often you will show understanding of the key term through your answer. You can't basically answer a question on labour turnover without understanding what labour turnover is. So you can start with a definition, but if you are really confident that you know that you're going to explain to the examiner that you understand the key term throughout the essay, you don't have to. It might just be a waste of time. But certainly if you're going to skip a question because you're not sure on how to answer it, if you do know a definition, just stick that down because you might get 1-2 marks for that. definitely use the context provided. Okay, so they might give you the industry that the company is in. They might give you some financial data. If you can do any relevant calculations, that's fantastic. In addition to that, if you can provide relevant examples that are not in the case study but help you answer the question, that can be good. For example, there was a question in 2018 on intrapreneurs, which is in the specification, I believe, Unit 9. The examiner's report said that students who used Google as an example, wasn't in the case study, but it was a relevant example that helped them answer the question. So if you bring in that wider knowledge of business, the examiner basically wants to know that you've been studying business and you've got an awareness of it. And if you can bring in relevant examples, that's very helpful. Make sure, now this is crucial, that you link back to and clearly answer the question. So this question here on labour turnover and how that would affect customer service, you would really want to make sure that your final sentence is linking to customer service and how that's been affected by labour turnover. Now then, again, students really want a clear structure to go for. Now, often two clearly focused paragraphs will help you. Two clearly focused paragraphs to answer the question, but you don't have to do that. If you've got one paragraph that really answers the question, that's fine, right? So you don't need to sweat on, AQA are going to make me do two paragraphs. As long as you've answered the question, that's fine. But the examiner's report last year said, certainly for one question, students were able to hit level 3 in a 9-mark question through two relevant paragraphs. Okay, but having said that, if the question, you've managed to answer that in one paragraph and you don't have anything else to say, fine, move on to the next question and don't worry too much about it. So, just to go back to the example question, I've made an answer for it. So maybe you might have paused it, had a look at a plan for this. Maybe you could time yourself for 9 minutes, pause the video and write up an answer to this question. So this is my answer to the question. I've said definition there. I don't think that I would actually need one in here. You could put the formula for income elasticity of demand. Anything. This I would do if you're not going to answer the question. So if you're not sure on how to answer the question, but you can remember the definition or the formula for price elasticity of, income elasticity of demand, then stick that in. The reason that I don't think that I need the definition at the beginning is I'm going to clearly explain to the examiner in my answer that I understand income elasticity of demand. So there's the figures. Coffee had an income elasticity of demand of plus 0.2. So in the example, coffee could be identified as a normal luxury good because of its coefficient of positive 2. This means that demand for coffee is income elastic and therefore highly responsive to changes in income. An increase in income of 10% is expected to increase demand for coffee by 20%. Okay, so I've shown the examiner that I really understand what income elasticity of demand is, and I've put in a calculation here. Now, whenever I'm doing calculations of price elasticity of demand or income elasticity of demand, if they haven't told me specifically how much price or income is changing by, I always use 10% because it's just easy. So there we go. An increase in demand for income is expected to increase coffee by 20%. Tea, meanwhile, has been estimated to be an inferior good because of its coefficient of minus 0.5. This means that demand for tea is inversely related to changes in income. In other words, an increase in income of 10% would be expected to reduce demand for tea by 5%. So what have I done in this paragraph? Well, you can see that I have used the data in the case study. It's clearly in context because I've explained it. I put in a calculation and I've tried to link back to sales volume Perhaps I haven't actually done that well enough because I've just said it should increase demand for coffee and demand for tea. But here's my second paragraph. Therefore, the cafe's overall sales of hot drinks would be expected to see increases in demand for coffee, whilst there could be a fall in demand for tea. Demand for coffee is likely to increase further in proportion to demand for tea. I should probably put, in fact, in this final paragraph, the sales volume of coffee is likely to increase further in proportion to the sales volume of tea. That's a better way of doing it because I've then linked back to the question, which is about sales volume. So this is what the examiner's report said in 2017, this box here. Maybe you could just pause it and read it. Really important that you use the examiner's reports if you can get your hands on them. Just the second question from 2017, it was another question that used a lot of figures, basically calculations. So you could, if the question is to explain how the use of debt factoring would benefit this company, and they give you this data. Again, maybe just quickly pause the video if you want to have a go at answering the question. Now, I just planned this one, but I would probably start by explaining what debt factoring is. So I probably would start with the definition because I just want to make sure that the examiner knows that I understand it. Then I use the case study, put in some calculations. So you can see that the receivables increased by 130% over the period. All right, so make sure you can calculate your percentage changes because that's very powerful rather than just putting in the figures. Their cash has entirely run out. All right, they've gone from 400 to 0, and their payables are 550,000. Okay, but receivables of 6,900 would cover them. So I can make a pretty good argument out of that. This might only be one paragraph, right? This might only be one paragraph, but I feel I've fully answered the question there, so that would be fine. Okay, so that is the examiner's report for this question. Okay, so I'll just end with that slide there. The one observation I would make is that the 2018 9-mark questions were kind of less calculation based. They were more like linking these two random points on the specification, and you can plan for that by simply picking two topics at random, maybe through flashcards, and writing a chain of analysis to try and link them. I hope you find that video helpful.